Well, welcome back. We're going to have a boxing or unboxing today on this Presto Precise digital pressure canner. Get a little close-up view for you. I bought this from the manufacturer online. About $250 plus tax. So it's a little expensive. Considering some of the features, we hope it's going to be worth it. And I notice here it says a lot of people are confused by this. It says this is the first canner that meets USDA safe canning requirements. It is not approved by the USDA. It is not recommended by the USDA. The only thing this USDA means is that the company feels that this canner will meet those safe canning guidelines. And so we're going to try it out and test it and make sure. This is automated, so that set and forget. We can do pressure canning with this. We can do boiling water canning with this. Capacity is 5 quarts for pressure canning. I was just informed that it's 5 quarts of a regular mouth and 4 for the large mouth. We'll look at that. We'll put them in there to see why. You can do 8 pints and 10 half pints. So for jams and jellies and small things like that, you have much more utility than for the large ones. One thing that you need to notice is that for this boiling water canning, it does not do quarts. You can only hot or boiling water can half pints and pints, and that is because it does not get deep enough to cover the top of the jar with 2 inches of water. But that's what we're going to be looking at today. So stick around, and when we come back, we're going to be tearing it out of the box and taking a close look at what all is included. So looking into this, we got a digital guide instructions. Set those aside for when we have problems. We got a pan, little thing that goes on the bottom, I believe. Looks like we got a power cord, a lot of foam packing. Got a quick start guide, looks like. And that's all for the box. Always check your packing material, front and bottom, top and bottom, inside and out. People, manufacturers sometimes have a perverse sense of humor and hide things in there that you would normally think to look for, like AA batteries that they hide in little crevices and corners. Anyway, this is it. Our instructions on here how to open, and so we turn this knob here and lift it up. That breaks a seal on the canner. And then you lift that up out of the way, and then you should be able to rotate this lid here. You got a little mark that says locked, and then a cup, which I guess is the lock. And then rotate it over, it says install, remove. And so rotate over to that, and you should be able to just lift it right up. And underneath here, we've got fairly standard silicone ring, a wire rack to retain things. We got a pop-up pressure release, and then looks here to be a overpressure or I don't know what that is. That's probably some sort of steam locking release mechanism. Inside here we've got the kettle. There are markings, if I can get the light right. There are markings in here on the side to show you the minimum and maximum water levels, I believe. We'll check that here shortly. And then more packing material. And in the bottom there is a pressure switch so that it does not turn on when it's empty. There's the thing how it sets. These are quart jars. And it looks like we're going to be able to fit 5 of them without a problem. There's a little room here in the middle, not big enough for another quart jar. But if you're mixing sizes, you could probably get a pint in there or half pint in there. You'd have to process it at the same parameters as the quart jars, but you know, if you're in a big hurry and you just got 1 or 2 to work with, then that's fine. You can see here that this top of this jar is maybe an inch below the rim of this bucket, and so yeah, you're not going to do hot water, boiling water canning with this. There's just not enough vertical space above the rim of the jar to do the job. Pretty standard electrical cord here. It looks to be the same kind of connector that you would see in a computer. So if you ever lose it, you might be able to swap out, turn your computer off, and plug your pressure canner in. And it's not a real long cord, but it's good enough. In our setup here, we've got a house under construction, and one of the things I wanted on the countertop was an electric outlet back here in the countertop, so I could plug things in just like this, and for this exact purpose. That way I'm not running electric cords all over the place. First plug in, it says pressure can. Turn this knob down here and it switches pressure can to boiling water can. We're going to do that. And it's got 2 other controls here. I think you can hit the X and hold it in for a couple of seconds, so it's going to reset. So now it's time for the meat. We're going to prep that meat that's thawed out, put that in these canning jars and can what we can. We'll be back in just a second. Now this has a warming feature, a bottle warming feature, where we fill this pot to the bottom line. It's got 3 lines in, and we fill up the bottom line with the warm water. Warm water will save you some time. Then you take the jars you're going to use and you fill them halfway with warm water, and you put them in there and put the lid back on. So we're going to install remove over to locked. This pressure sensor goes in and twist to turn, and we set the pressure regulator out here to vent. So once we got that can pressure, it's going to ask us how much time to use. Now this is pre-cooked meat. What we're going to be canning is, we picked up at the Dutchman's down there, and this is pit cooked beef, broiled beef brisket, Brookwood Farms. We paid $2.49 a pound for it, so we got about 2 pounds here for $5.30, and it's already seasoned. It just needs to be heated up, but half of it thawed out when the freezer didn't close. So we're going to can it and not worry about it. It's already pre-cooked. So according to the instructions here, we're going to process quartz for 90 minutes. So we're going to adjust this up to 90 minutes. And then we're going to hit this arrow button here. And it does some warming first. So insert the jars. And it's going to warm them up. And when they get warm, it'll beep on for us, to us. It'll beep and let us know that that stage is complete. When that happens, we'll take a couple of those jars out. We'll cut this meat up into 2 or 3 slices, 2 or 3 chunks, and put that back in the jars. We're not going to be adding any hot water or any other liquid to it. We'll be using it as is and canning without any additional liquid. Well, had a bit of a problem. One of the reasons I got this is we get distracted here a lot, and that happened while I was waiting on these to warm. Went out to take care of the animals and give them some feed and water, and found the water system had stopped working correctly. So it took a lot longer than I expected to fix. Got a little drenched, so but again, that's why we got this thing, because it did its thing and now it's waiting on me. So we're going to continue on. Got washed up and dried up pretty good. We're going to continue on with this. It is now warm, and it is asking us to fill the jars. So that's what we'll be doing. So down here, you see it's in the warming phase. Fill jars, and it did say okay. We're going to assume it's still warm. And lift this off and unlock it. And whenever you got hot water, you want to open that lid away from you, like that. So if any steam comes out, it goes out away from you, not towards you. Somewhere there were canning supplies. I do not know where she put the canning supplies. So instead of a jar lifter, which you really should be using a jar lifter. But instead of a jar lifter, I'm going to use the old-fashioned jar lifters and just pull this hot jar out and empty the hot water out of it. Leave the others in there to stay warm while we take care of this meat. Now, this is the meat we're going to be packaging. What we're going to do is open this package. That's good brisket. We're going to slice this up a little bit. Thought I had a fork here. And we're just going to take a slice of it and grab it with our fingers. This is chipped beef brisket that is supposedly pit smoked. And so we're just going to slice this up into chunks and drop it in there. Thought maybe this was going to take 2 jars, but the way it's crumbling apart, I think I could probably get it all in one. So it's going to be close. You want 1-inch head space. We've got air down at the bottom. And so we're going to squish it and squish it some more and make do. That is way too full, folks. Way too full. We'll get another jar out of here and we'll split it and we'll have 2 half jars. Now this would have been a lot easier if I had a fork or a regular spoon instead of a spatula or a ladle, but this is what we got, so this is what we're going to be using. This is chipped brisket, use it to make sandwiches, and it's not bad by itself. So 2 partial jars, that's pretty good. We're going to take, wet it down with vinegar. And we want to use vinegar on this because we're dealing with some grease. And we want to get all the grease and crud and particles and particulates and all the mean nasty stuff off of here. And we're going to get it off the rim. And we're going to get it off around the rim on the inside just a bit. Come back around here and get that one. And go into a fresh piece of this towel, fresh place here. We're going to wipe down this other one. So we got lids. New lids. Always make sure you use new lids on these. And you can reuse the rings, but not the lids. Some people have success reusing the lids. I find the risk unacceptable. They're cheap enough. We just use them like that. Tighten the lids down until you first feel resistance on this. You don't need to be cinched down. You should be able just with one hand loosen and tighten these lids, and that's sufficient. So we're ready. We filled the jars. Ready to put this back on. On here, install remove. Lock that in place. And turn the regulator over to can. Nope, not yet. Sorry, not yet. Put that in place. Push the button and it is heating. Now you want to make sure that the regulator is on vent. That this is locked in place. This is locked in place. And you'll see this heat up. Progress bar, activity bar, status bar scrolling across like that. It's heating up It'll take about 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes sometimes for this to get up to heat. Just like with regular pressure canning, the water in here is going to be brought to a boil, and it will be boiled for 10 minutes. Once it gets to the right temperature, this will change over to 10, and you'll see it change over to 10, and it will boil, venting the interior for 10 minutes, and then it'll start beeping. And we'll be back here to check on that and do the next step. Okay, it's been venting for 10 minutes, and you can feel the steam coming out. You can see it, there's a little vent hole right there where the latch, where it locks in place, and you can see the steam bubbling out of that. And we're ready now to put the regulator on. The regulator's already on. We're just going to turn it over to the can position. And it's in the can position. And we're going to click on this arrow to go to the next one. It's still waiting for the temperature to come up and the pressure to establish. You see over here on that vent line, little vent lock. Once we turn that regulator to can, steam started coming out of that a lot faster. And that's what normally happens in a pressure canner. That lock will eventually, the steam pressure coming through there will eventually be high enough that it'll push that lock up in place and seal the canner, and that causes the pressure to increase more, and it will start its countdown. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but you can hear it boiling inside, and you can hear the steam coming out, and you can see that lock right back here wobbling and jumping and popping up and down, and that steam coming out of there is hot. There we go, and that steam lock went in place, and we're now building pressure in the canner. The temperature sensor will monitor the temperature on this. This canner operates a little bit different than the others that you work on a stovetop. With the others, you start it boiling and it's processing, and you monitor the steam pressure, and you keep that steam pressure between certain limits depending on your altitude. And if you keep it between those limits, then your temperature in the bath is going to be at a certain value. And you monitor and control the pressure in the canner in order to maintain and control the temperature in the canner. This does it just a little backwards. It's called a pressure canner, and it does use pressure, creates a pressurized vessel in here in order to raise the temperature of the meat or what's in the cans, what's in the bottles, but it doesn't monitor the pressure. This is a pressure canner, but it monitors the temperature. And that's what this temperature sensor over here is all about. That temperature sensor monitors the temperature of the vessel and not the pressure of the vessel. And it will maintain the temperature in the vessel by controlling the heating, and it'll turn on and off and up and down and control the heating elements in here in order to control the temperature of the vessel and through that the temperature of the food. So right now you can still hear it boiling. What that's doing is building pressure on the inside. Still getting just a little bit of bubbling out of that pressure lock. That is normal. This is probably condensate that's trapped on the low pressure side of that lock, and as everything heats up, it's still above boiling because the temperature in here is above the boiling point of water at room pressure. So any water in contact with this or any of the metal parts on the outside is going to be boiled away. This sticker here, it's starting to peel up when it got hot. And there's a thing that says remove, so I did. We're going to walk away for a little while this gets up to temperature. And when it gets to temperature, this will change from a scrolling status bar to a fixed status bar, and it will slowly increment over and fill in these white dots to show the percent complete for the time that's been set. So if it's over here, there's looks like there's 9 or 10 dots there. So if it's 20% finished, it'll have 2 dots that'll stay lit. Alright, we're at temperature and it says now canning. And that means we're going to get a timed countdown for 90 minutes, and it'll hold it at that temperature for 90 minutes and then shut down. And that is exactly the reason I wanted this. There's too often I get called away, have to go do something, I can't stand here and watch it. If it's on the stove, you got to monitor the pressure. But if get called away and can't do something, I can't check it every 5 to 10 minutes to make sure that the pressure doesn't drop below that critical value. Most of the time it's fine, but sometimes it's not. And if it drops down, you got to start over. With this, now that it's canning, I can walk away. It's going to monitor itself. So it's now counting down to 89. It will monitor itself, and when this counts down to 0, it will shut down, turn off the heater, and vent naturally. And it'll take 90 minutes for this, and it'll take maybe another 90 minutes, hour and a half, 2 hours maybe, for it to cool down naturally. So that's 3 or 4 hours from now. This might be ready to go. It's getting late. It's time for me to head to the house and get some sleep, get some supper. And so I'm just going to walk away and leave it. But we'll be back in the morning, and when we come back, this will have stayed at this set temperature for the right amount of time. It will have cooled down naturally, and the lids will have set, and we should be able just to pop the top, take the jars out, and be finished with it. So this is kind of it's not complete set and walk away, but once you get to this part, you got nothing else to do until it cools down. And that is the reason I bought this, is that hands-off automatic monitoring and heat, maintaining the heat, and then automatically cooling down at the end of it. So we'll be back in the morning and show you what it looks like. Well, it's the next morning, and as you can see, it says it's done. And we're going to crack this open and see how well it's done. So we got the vent regulator back here. It's cold. Well, a little above room temperature maybe, but it's cool enough. Regulator back here, going to turn from can to vent. Make sure there's no air pressure in there, but you can see that the pressure lock back here has dropped, so we know there's no pressure inside it. It's all vented, it's all cooled down. We unlock it here and we lift that out of the way, and then we're going from locked to remove. And as good practice, we're going to lift this up and away from us, I know it's cold, I know it's not hot, there's no pressure on it, but just, you know, good practice to keep them getting burned, and we'll stay that way. Now, we had 2 jars in there, and these are cold. So we can take a look at it here. The lid is down, and we take the ring off and we pull on that lid, pull on that seal, and it's good. So we know we got a good vacuum seal in here. We got the little broth, grease or whatever down in there. That's fine. I like to put the rings back on here. Some people say you should, some people say you shouldn't. If you don't, and it builds pressure, it can pop the lid off. That shows it's bad, which is good. You don't want these down tight to hold that lid in place. So you want them on here but loose so this lid can pop off if it builds pressure. But when I figure I'm putting them into a cabinet, and I'm going to be stacking them one on top of another, so I want that ring on there so that when the next one comes in and they get stacked on top, it's sitting on the ring and not the lid. For the same reason that you don't want these down tight, it'll hold that lid in place if there is pressure buildup. Stack these one on top of another. Without the ring on there, that lid can be held down by the one on top, and it'll just continue to build pressure, and you won't know it until you go to use it, and then it pops off in your face and you get a bunch of foul smelling gas coming out. So there's one of them. Here's the other, and that looks fairly good. It's shredded beef, barbecue brisket, and we'll probably be having these for supper in the next few days, but that's only because they're available and won't take long to heat up. We may throw that into some pasta with marinara sauce or some other sauce. So chili and mac, we'll get barbecue and mac. The rest of the things in here, we've got some, and you can see it here, we got some hot water stain, or cold hard water stain on there. We got a little yellow or a little white residue. Should have put some vinegar in that bottle, in that water. That'll help cut that down. But I didn't think about it, so we got some hot water, hard water scale buildup on that pot. It's not going to hurt anything. I'm not going to worry about it. The other bottles we have in here, remember we had 2 that had food in them. I filled the other 3 places up with empty bottles. They're just empty bottles half full of water. You want to do that to keep the bottles from bouncing around. When this is boiling, when this is heating up, this boils pretty good, and these bottles can move around a little bit. If you don't have it full, if you don't have all the places filled, they can bounce around enough and even tip over. And that is not a good idea. So throw some empty bottles in there if you don't have a full set. We're done. It's over. We can unplug it. We can turn it off, or we can try it again with something else. If you're doing a subsequent batch, you want to be sure that this water in here is cool enough, same temperature as the bottles that you'll be using. Because if you take cold bottles with food in it, or even without food in it, if you take a cold bottle and you put it in hot water, thermal expansion on that glass can cause it to crack and break, and that is not something you want to happen with food in it, because then everything's ruined. So there's the review. It's some good things and some bad things. It only holds 1 layer of quart bottles as opposed to a stovetop canner that can hold 7 quarts. Capacity is a bit limited. If you're doing a lot of canning, it may or may not be a good choice for you. Nice thing about it is that it's automatic. I can get it set up, I can turn it on to start, processing, and then walk away and go to sleep. Let it go overnight. Don't have to worry about it. Don't have to stay up till 3 a.m. to make sure that the pressure stays above the right value, or having to restart it if I forget and it drops below. It is, like I said, the capacity is a little small for canning large things. If you're doing jams and jellies, you're not going to be doing more than a dozen or two at a time. Then I think this will probably be okay, especially for the smaller jars. You can put those in there. You can put a couple of layers in there. You can get a lot of jam and jelly into this. Again, it's not as high capacity as the old American Standard pressure cooker or even the Presto pressure cooker. So if you're doing a lot, we'll be doing a lot. We'll be canning our chicken here probably in the next round, next harvest, which will be in a couple of weeks. We'll be cutting them up into pieces and canning them simply because we're out of freezer space. So we'll be doing a lot of chicken, and this will come in handy for that. So yeah, I think it's worth the $250 we paid for it. If you don't have a pressure cooker, that's about the same price you'd pay for a good pressure cooker. Especially if you get the new American Standard cookers, if you don't find a used one. Those are ideal. Those are the gold standard, as it were, for pressure cookers, and everybody compares to that. So those are several $100s. Plus you got to sit there and watch them overnight, or however long it takes to finish the run. The downside is capacity. That's about the only thing I can find that I don't like about it. Is capacity, and I think I can live with that given the convenience. So if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and ring the bell for notifications. You'll see more of these. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, and we will be talking to you later. Bye.